Three men in cheap tactical vests and baseball caps stormed through my front gate and slapped me across the face before I could even ask who they were. The next kick shattered my knee and I collapsed onto the gravel staring up at their fake HOA badges while my vision went white. In that moment, I thought they were going to take everything from me, my home, my dignity, maybe even my life. What they didn't know was that my wife Natalie was standing in the kitchen listening, and if they'd known who she used to be, they never would have stepped foot on my property. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 42 years old, an aerospace engineer, and for the past 8 years I've lived with my wife in a cabin-style house overlooking Pine Ridge Lake. Life was supposed to be quiet here. I worked on design projects from my drafting studio upstairs. Natalie spent her days gardening or listening to crime podcasts, and our biggest concern was whether to expand the deck or redo the drainage ditch. HOA business. That was nothing more than Margaret Foster sending out a newsletter every few months and organizing the lake cleanup. There were no enforcement officers, no uniforms, no threats. At least not until that Tuesday morning. I was outside fiddling with the gravel driveway, NPR humming from my phone, when I saw a white van pull in behind my truck. 3 men climbed out swaggering like they owned the place. Their vests were the kind you'd grab from a military surplus store, pouches hanging at odd angles. Badges pinned crooked. The leader, a heavy-set guy with a graying beard, barked, "Ethan Cole. We're here on official HOA business." Something in my gut twisted. I stood slowly, trying to stay calm. "I didn't catch your names. Can I see some ID?" He held out a battered folder. "I'm Officer Davidson. This is Officer Martinez and Officer Webb. You owe $15,000 in unpaid HOA fees. This is a foreclosure order." I opened the folder. It was laughable. A copy of a copy, no seal, formatting errors, a signature that looked like a toddler's scribble. "This doesn't look official," I said, my voice steady but my heart pounding. "Our HOA doesn't issue anything like this, and I've never missed a payment. Margaret deposits my checks every quarter. Maybe you can tell me where your office is located." They shifted, exchanged nervous glances. Webb rolled up his sleeve, and that's when I saw the tattoo MCPD. Either he used to be a cop or he wanted people to think he was. Davidson's face hardened. "That's not important. What's important is you pay up now." I backed toward the porch. "Look, I'll need to verify this with our actual HOA president." That's when his hand cracked across my cheek. I stumbled, shocked more than hurt, but before I could react, Webb's boot smashed into my knee. The sound, like a dry branch snapping, still echoes in my head. Pain shot through me, blinding and hot, and I collapsed onto the driveway. Davidson leaned over me, snarling something about teaching me a lesson. But here's what those idiots didn't realize: my doorbell camera had recorded everything. Not only that, it was live streaming to the Pine Ridge HOA Facebook group. Hundreds of neighbors were already watching as 3 so-called officers assaulted me in broad daylight. And then there was Natalie. She told me later what went through her mind when she heard my scream. 6 years of civilian life vanished in an instant. The woman who washed dishes and worried about garden soil was gone. The Navy SEAL came back. She set down the plate, turned off the faucet, and started moving. With one button on her phone, she activated our home defense system. Sirens, blared red lights, flashed. The whole property turned into a scene straight out of a crime drama. The men froze confused. Martinez glanced toward their van. Webb shifted uneasily, and Davidson barked at them to finish it. But by then, Natalie had already slipped out the kitchen door and was circling behind them. From the ground, I saw a movement in the corner of my eye, and then, fast as lightning, Webb crumpled silently. Natalie had cut off his carotids with a chokehold. Martinez spun around just in time to catch a nerve strike that dropped his arm uselessly to his side. And Davidson, the big man with the fake authority, reached for a taser. Wrong move. Natalie's palm strike smashed into his temple and he toppled like a sack of bricks. 30 seconds. That's all it took for my wife to level 3 grown men who thought they could terrorize us. Neighbors began spilling out phones in hand, some already calling 911. Mrs. Henderson from across the street yelled that she'd captured everything on her cameras. Sirens wailed closer. And me, I lay there clutching my broken leg, half in agony, half in awe of the woman I'd married. At the hospital, while they worked on my leg, I started to think maybe the fight wasn't worth it. My engineering brain told me the math was bad powerful people versus one injured man. Selling the house, disappearing, maybe starting over somewhere else. That seemed safer. I hated admitting it, but I felt powerless, like the system was too stacked against me. But then Henderson showed me the results from her facial recognition scan. Webb wasn't just some thug, he was a disgraced former cop fired for excessive force. Detective Morrison arrived and told us other families had been hit in almost the same way. Fake HOA officers, bogus documents, intimidation, and suddenly homes on prime lakefront were foreclosed and sold to a company called Alpine Strategic Holdings. And then came the name that made my blood boil, Linda Marlowe. She was running for city council on a platform of revitalizing Pine Ridge. Turns out, her revitalization meant bulldozing our homes to build a luxury resort, and she wasn't working alone. Her lawyer, Richard Blackstone, was behind every shady foreclosure. Judge Patricia Williams, Marlowe's sister, though she used her married name to hide it, was rubber-stamping every case, and every family targeted military, veterans, spouses, kids who'd served, because they thought we'd just salute, shut up, and obey. That was the moment I knew I couldn't walk away. It wasn't just my house anymore. It was every family's house. We rallied. Sarah Jenkins, my old Navy friend, told me how her family had lost everything 6 months earlier. Michael Harper, a former student of mine turned attorney, dug into Marlowe's finances and found the money trail, $50 million of so-called private investment with no legitimate source. It reeked of money laundering. Still, Marlowe didn't stop. One night, while we gathered in the community center with 47 other families, her hired security surrounded the building. They claimed we were violating fire codes, trespassing, anything to break us up. And right then, Mrs. Henderson started live streaming. Tens of thousands of people were watching as Marlowe herself stood in front of the cameras flanked by her guards and sneered. These people will be removed whether they like it or not. Pine Ridge belongs to those with vision and money, not to small-minded homeowners. It was arrogance on full display, and it was exactly what we needed, because that's when 3 black SUVs pulled in, lights, flashing doors flying open. FBI agents stormed the scene. Agent Maria Torres strode forward and read Linda Marlowe, her rights conspiracy wire, fraud, money laundering, deprivation of rights under color of law. Handcuffs clicked shut, while the live stream audience erupted online. Judge Williams tried to flee in her Mercedes, but neighbors boxed her in. When the feds pulled her out, they found bank transfers from Alpine straight into her personal accounts. Blackstone was already in custody, his office raided. The entire network crumbled in one night. I'll never forget sitting there, leg-braced, sweat dripping down my neck, watching Marlowe shoved into the back of an FBI vehicle. She'd spent months trying to crush us, convinced money and power made her untouchable. And now, she was nothing but a fallen politician with wrists bound in steel. That's where my story ends, at the exact moment the woman who thought she owned Pine Ridge finally learned she owned nothing. The lesson is simple. When people try to bully you with fake authority, the only real power you have is standing together and refusing to be silent.